Hello, good day to all. This is Miss A. Krishna Sundar, Assistant Professor, Department of English, KAHM Unity Women's College, Manjeri. Today, we would be dealing with the author Philip Larkin and one of the most beautiful poems written by Larkin, which is titled as Church Going. Before we step into the poem, let's have a brief look at the background from which the poem originated. Church-going first appeared in the collection titled as The Less Deceived, which was published in the year 1955. As we all know, Larkin has written only a very limited number of poems, and he has only 4 anthologies remaining to his credit. When this particular collection was released in the year 1955, only 100 copies were printed. But with the passage of time, this collection became one of the most recognized and one of the most outstanding collections in the history of literature. I'm sure you might have heard about another title, Next Please, another poem written by Larkin. This poem deals with the theme of death. This poem again is a part of the very same collection, The Less Deceived. Church-going is considered as one of the most popular poems in the collection, The Less Deceived. More than being a popular poem, this is also considered as one of the most beautiful poems written by Larkin. The poem has got 7 stanzas, and each stanza consists of 9 lines each. If we have to find a reason which instigated Larkin to write this poem, we should definitely go back to an interview that he gave in the year 1981. Larkin says, "It came from the first time I saw a ruined church in Northern Ireland, and I had never seen a ruined church before discarded. It shocked me. Now, of course, it is commonplace. Churches are not so much ruined as turned into bingo halls, warehouses for the refrigerators, or split-level houses for architects." So it is a clear indication that this poem is based on Larkin's personal experience. We have already learned that Larkin is a very keen observer, and this poem is definitely a reflection of Larkin's observations. Now let's have a look at the title of the poem. The title here is Church Going. The title actually is paradoxical, or in other words, you can call it ambiguous. Now, ambiguous means something that lacks clarity. If you want to analyze the title in a very simple way, it's as simple as going to the church. But if you look at the title in a more deeper, in a more profound perspective, definitely it can mean something greater. It can mean something as churches are disappearing or churches are vanishing from this earth. So this would have been a greater reflection from the side of Larkin, who actually saw the decline of churches in the later 1950s. England during the 1950s witnessed this kind of a gradual decline. Larkin has survived the Second World War, and he has seen what life looks like during the post-war period. Churches were completely under decline during this period, and even campaigns like Save Our Church Week got initiated. Even historic church preservation trusts were formed to bring back the glory of these churches which they lost during the 1950s. Apart from this poem can be considered as an autobiographical poem because the major theme here is in fact Larkin's reflections about church. We know that Larkin had a very lonely existence, and he always felt distanced and uprooted in society. He was a pronounced atheist too. And this poem is considered as a religious poem by many critics and readers. But Larkin hated to call this as a religious poem because he considered this poem to be a secular and humanist one. Larkin was against all social systems. If you have gone through Larkin's biography, you can understand that he never got married, though he had many long-standing relationships with many women. Maybe he didn't get married because he was against marriage, which was again another social institution. Similarly, religion is also a social system, a social institution which brings people together in a society. So Larkin was totally against all kinds of social systems, and the same irritation or frustration can be seen even in this poem. So just to sum up the points that we already had gone through, Church-Going was written in the year 1954, and it first appeared in the collection The Less Deceived, which was published in the very next year, 1955. This is written in the form of a monologue because you can see there is only one speaker who narrates all the incidents, and the speaker here is Larkin himself. He begins as he undertakes a cycle journey. We come to understand this as we go through the poem. The futility as well as utility of churches. This is actually the main theme here. We can also see the general decline during the period, especially the post-World War period, and the poem reflects the social context. Moreover, Larkin's agnosticism is also revealed. Now, there is a slight clarification here. In the previous slide, we already said that Larkin was a pronounced atheist. And now it is said Larkin is agnostic. Now, there is a slight difference between the two terms. An atheist is a person who doesn't believe in God, but an agnostic is a person who doesn't believe in God but is ready to believe if somebody can prove the existence of God. With Larkin, some biographers refer Larkin as an agnostic, but in some other books he has been referred to as an atheist. So we do not know what exactly Larkin had in his mind. It is rather ambiguous. Now Larkin calls this poem as a secular poem. He doesn't like to consider this poem as a religious poem. So before we move into the poetic lines, I would like to take you through some pictures, and I would like to share a few experiences that I had. Now this is a very basic ordinary church in England. Now I'm going to take you to another place. This is a chapel, and this is a very famous chapel. I can give you 5 seconds. Can you identify this place? You can see the beautiful carvings, the stone cuttings. There is a beautiful garden. Any idea? Okay, now this is actually Roslin Chapel, which is situated in Scotland. If you haven't heard about this chapel, I would definitely tell you, please Google it out and find what is important about this chapel. Now this chapel became very famous after the novel The Da Vinci Code was published by Dan Brown. A few years later, the very same novel was converted and remade into a movie in which Tom Hanks plays the lead role. I'm sure all of you might have heard about the Da Vinci Code. And this Roslin Chapel actually comes and takes a very huge position within the novel and even within the movie. And to top it all, much of the scenes in the movie, The Da Vinci Code, was actually shot inside the crypt of this Roslin Chapel. This Roslin Chapel has got an enormous history related with Bible, and the crypt within the chapel is still considered as a vessel of mysteries. So please Google it out and see what it is. I'm not going into those details. So what I wanted to share with you is that this is a picture which I captured from this Roslin Chapel in 2019, just 1 year back. And just have a look at the picture, you can see there is nobody around. Now this Rosalind Chapel became very famous after the release of this movie, because most of the scenes were actually shot inside this chapel, inside the crypt. So this suddenly became a tourist spot and many people started visiting this lonely chapel. But if you look at the picture, you can see there is nobody around me. It's a very huge place, and when I visited this chapel, I could just find only a countable number of people. So maybe this is a situation in the year 2019, and maybe this was what Larkin was trying to say during the 1950s. Because I couldn't find anybody barging into this chapel. Even I was wondering, because this was such a beautiful chapel, it has got a great history, it has got incomparable kind of beauty, the massive structures, the stone built walls, but nobody is there to see the beauty of this place. So probably this is the kind of situation that Larkin is reflecting upon. If nobody comes to the churches, what exactly is the reason for churches to remain in this world? So let's start with the poem. Once I am sure there is nothing going on, I step inside, letting the door thud shut. Another church. So see, I comes twice. Once I am sure, I step inside. So this I shows Larkin's disconnected nature and his disconnectedness with the entire society. He says, once I am sure there is nothing going on, I step inside. So initially the speaker is making sure of the fact that there is nothing going on inside the church. He is sure that there is nobody inside, and then he decides to step in, letting the door thud shut. Now thud shut means he is actually slamming the door with a noise, with a banging noise. Now this indeed shows Larkin's disrespectful nature towards church. Normally, when we go to religious places, we maintain silence as owing some kind of respect towards the place. But here, he is slamming the door and closing it because it shows his irreverence towards the church. And now he says, another church, which means this church is just like any other church. In short, all churches are in the same condition because there is nothing going on inside. So probably the decline of the church is what Larkin is reflecting upon. I would like to take you to another picture now. Now this is Nürnberg Abbey, and this is one of the famous abbeys in Austria. Have you heard of the film titled as Sound of Music? I'm sure you might have heard about this movie. If you haven't, please check it out. Now, Sound of Music was a movie which was released during the 1960s, and even after 60, 70 years later, even if you watch this movie today, you will enjoy this movie, because that is the power of this movie. It is a very beautiful movie. It is considered as a musical movie. There are lots of beautiful songs. You can just check in YouTube and find out a few songs from this movie. Now, this movie is based on a realistic story where a captain with 7 children marries a nun. And in reality, the marriage happened from the church, the one church which you see in the picture. Now, when this realistic story was remade into a movie in the name of Sound of Music, the wedding scene was shot from the very same abbey. And this became a popular place soon after the release of this movie, Sound of Music. So this was 3 years back when I visited this church, and you can see it is almost the same condition that I talked about, or maybe the same condition that Larkin was talking about. You can see there are just a handful of people here, and even after becoming a very popular church, being cast in one of the most famous movies, people were not really interested to come and see these places. Now you can see the interiors here. It looks really beautiful. Lots of carvings, lots of statues, sculptures, etc. But still, you can see there are just countable number of people at the altar which you can see. Now this is another chapel in Austria which is known as Hofkirche. This is actually in a place called Innsbruck. I have never seen a church or a chapel which is as beautiful as this. The interiors are really, really beautiful because you feel that you are in some dreamy, imaginary world when you are inside. You can see the big statues. If you compare it with the size of mine, you can see how big the statues are. Lots of statues, lots of paintings. It's such a beautiful place and a huge place. But when I went there, we were the only people inside that chapel. So I feel these pictures will tell you more about the conditions of churches. Maybe the situations are very different in India or Kerala. I'm talking about the situation, how religion is changing or how religious patterns are changing in the Western culture. So let's continue with the poem. Matting, seeds and stone and little books. So now Larkin gives a complete description of the things that he finds inside the church. The matting is there, seating, stone, little books. Now books can be the prayer books which are placed. So this is a vivid description of the things that he finds within the church. Sprawlings of flowers cut for Sunday, brownish now. Some brass and stuff up at the holy end, the small neat organ. So sprawlings of flowers cut for Sunday. So maybe people might have come for the Sunday Mass and the remnants are still remaining. Brownish now, so there is a clear indication that after Sunday, nobody came up to this place and it is still not cleaned. So this is totally an isolated place. Maybe a mass, a communion happened during Sunday, or sometimes maybe a marriage function, we do not know, but something happened because the remaining stuff is actually seen here and it is brown in color. Some brass and stuff up at the holy end. So maybe some candle stands or some kind of a stuff, wine glasses, these kind of things which are seen at the holy end. Holy end can be the altar where the priest stands and where from he gives the sermon. The small neat organ. Now a church is always indispensable without an organ, because organ which is a part of the choir, song, etc. So a small neat organ is also placed here. Now we can see Larkin is giving a very detailed, vivid description here. The cut flowers, brown in color, brass stuff, organ. So you can see detailed kind of descriptions are given here, and in fact he is making use of imagery. Now imagery is actually the power to recreate images in the mind of the readers through words. Now Larkin, being a very keen observer, gives a detailed description of the things that he finds inside the church. Now by brass stuff, maybe Larkin is also referring to things like candle stands or sometimes a candelabra. Now this is called a candelabra, and a candelabra consists of many candle stands together, huddled together. So once he gives a vivid description, now he moves on to the next part where he is talking about what he feels inside. And a tense, musty, unignorable silence brewed God knows how long. So now he says, what is it like being inside a lonely church? It is tense because there is nobody else. There is just Larkin alone inside the church. Musty. Musty means stale or damp smell. Maybe the smell is coming because it is a closed area. Remember, he closed the door when he got in. And maybe because it is a very huge place and sometimes the remnants might be causing the smell. Remember the sprawlings of flowers. So that could be the reason why there is a damp smell inside, an unignorable silence. If you have visited churches, especially very huge churches, you can see that there is a kind of echo that reverberates. Now, this is because it's a huge place, first of all. Secondly, if there are not enough people with a lot of wooden furniture, this echo can create a different sense. So maybe that's what he is talking about, unignorable silence, brewed God knows how long. Now this is rather complicated because this can be interpreted in two ways. Either you can read it as brewed God. Now brewed God, how do you interpret that? Now brewed actually comes from the term brewery. Now brewery is a place from where beer is made. So brewed God can mean intoxicated God, or maybe he is trying to mock God. Now that is one interpretation. Now the second interpretation is you can keep brewed, the word apart, and read it as brewed God knows how long. And maybe the second interpretation is more filling because brewed God doesn't make any clear kind of sense. So it should be like this: brewed, God knows how long. So brewed, maybe he is talking about the stuffed condition inside the church because the door is closed. There is a very musty kind of smell. There is an echo, silence. So he feels totally congested and frustrated within. God knows how long. So how long this is going to continue? Who knows? God knows. Now, there is some kind of an interesting feature coming here because it has already been noted that Larkin is an atheist. He doesn't believe in God. In such a case, how is he using the expression, God knows how long? Now, one explanation for this is that even if we become an atheist later, certain religious practices that we have learned in our childhood will never move out. And this is a kind of expression we use on a common level, like God knows, thank God. So this is a very casual kind of, a colloquial kind of expression that Larkin uses. So maybe, though he is an atheist, he is using this as a regular religious practice. God knows how long. Hatless, I take off my cycle clips in awkward reverence. Hatless. So he's not wearing a hat. I take off my cycle clips in awkward reverence. Now, in Western countries, as you know, they have very cold climatic conditions, unlike us, and usually they will be wearing a coat and a hat. And the moment they are going to step inside a house or move into some religious places, they automatically remove the coat and remove the hat because that is a sign of courtesy, a sign of respect to show others that you are respecting them. So that is a normal style employed in the Western culture. So here Larkin is hatless. Now we don't know about this culture because we don't wear hats normally. That is not a part of our culture. So hatless, he is not having a hat as of now. So instead, he is going to take off his cycle clips in awkward reverence. Now cycle clips, you can see the picture. Now this is actually a clip which is used to prevent the pants from becoming greasy from cycle chains. So this was the usual practice in early England. So he is talking about the cycle clips. So the moment he stepped from the cycle, he got into the church, he might be holding the cycle clip in his hands. So he took off the cycle clips in awkward reverence. So that was the only way by which Larkin can show his reverence, maybe the respect towards church. But the moment he takes out the cycle clips, we understand that he is actually using it in a satirical way, in a mocking way. Remember the wry humor that he employs in his poetry. So we understand clearly that he is not having any kind of reverence towards the church or these religious institutions. So the first stanza is a detailed description of the things that he finds inside the church, and also relating to the kind of feelings that he has within himself once he is inside the church. So with this, we come to the end of the first stanza. We'll be continuing with the stanzas. So thank you very much for your patient listening. If you have any queries, any suggestions, please do not hesitate to connect with me in my email ID. We'll be back soon with the rest of the poem. So thank you very much. Have a good day.